Jake Collins wiped grease from his hands as he walked through the metal hallways of Deep Space Research Station Omega-7. His work shift was over, and his boots made soft sounds on the floor. The station was quiet except for the hum of machines that kept everyone alive in the cold darkness of space. He stopped at a door marked Animal Rescue Center and pressed the button. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, Dr. Amy Foster was feeding a group of cats and dogs that had been saved from destroyed colonies and damaged ships. "Hey, Jake," Amy said, looking up from a bowl of cat food. "Still thinking about adopting?" Jake nodded. He had been alone on the station for 2 years. His job fixing machines and checking systems was important, but it got lonely. The other workers were nice enough, but they had families or went home to Earth when their shifts ended. Jake stayed because someone had to keep the station running. "I think I'm ready," he said. "Any of them need a good home?" Amy smiled and pointed to a corner cage. Inside was an orange cat with white patches on his chest and paws. The cat was bigger than the others, with bright green eyes that seemed to watch everything. One of his ears had a small notch in it, probably from a fight long ago. "That's Rusty," Amy said. "He came from a cargo ship that got hit by pirates near the Jupiter colonies. The crew said he was the smartest cat they'd ever seen. He could open doors, turn on lights, even seemed to understand when they talked to him." Jake walked over to the cage. Rusty looked at him with those bright eyes. The cat didn't meow or rub against the bars like the others did. He just watched Jake carefully, as if he was trying to figure something out. "He's been here 3 months," Amy continued. "People think he's too serious, too independent, but I think he just needs the right person." Jake opened the cage door. Rusty stepped out slowly, sniffed Jake's hand, then rubbed his head against Jake's palm. It was like the cat had made a decision. "I'll take him," Jake said. An hour later, Jake was setting up a bed and food bowls in his quarters. The room was small but comfortable, with a viewport that showed the stars outside. Rusty explored every corner, sniffing at things and checking under the furniture. When he was done, he jumped onto Jake's desk and sat down, looking out at space. "You like the view?" Jake asked. Rusty made a small chirping sound and touched his paw to the glass. Outside, other ships moved slowly past the station, cargo vessels bringing supplies, science ships heading out to study distant planets, and patrol boats keeping watch for trouble. Jake had just started dinner when the alarm went off. Red lights flashed in the hallways, and a voice came over the speakers. "All personnel report to stations. Long-range sensors have detected an unknown fleet approaching. This is not a drill." Jake's heart started beating faster. He grabbed his toolkit and headed for the door, but stopped when he saw Rusty. The cat was sitting perfectly still, his ears pointed forward and his tail twitching slightly. He was looking at the viewport with an intensity that made Jake nervous. The command center was full of people when Jake arrived. Commander Lisa Brady stood at the main screen, which showed dozens of red dots moving toward the station. The dots were still far away, but they were getting closer. "How many ships?" someone asked. "At least 50, said Pete Murphy, the chief engineer. "Maybe more. They're not responding to our signals." "Could be the Zephyrian Empire," said Captain Ben Taylor from the defense cruiser Vigilant. His ship was docked at the station for repairs. "We've heard reports of them moving into this sector." Jake had heard about the Zephyrians. They were aliens who conquered worlds by overwhelming them with superior technology and numbers. They had destroyed 3 human colonies in the past year. "How long until they get here?" Commander Brady asked. 6 hours, Pete said. Brady turned to face everyone in the room. We're evacuating all non-essential personnel. The transport ships will start loading in 1 hour. Essential crew will stay to operate the station's defenses and protect the evacuation. Jake felt his stomach drop. He was essential crew. That meant he would stay and fight, probably die, while everyone else escaped to safety. People started moving, talking quickly, and making plans. Jake walked back to his quarters in a daze. When he opened the door, he found Rusty exactly where he had left him, still staring out at space. The cat seemed to sense that something was wrong. "We're in trouble, buddy," Jake said, sitting down next to the cat. "Bad aliens are coming, and I have to stay and help fight them. But you can go on one of the evacuation ships. You'll be safe." Rusty turned to look at Jake and made a soft, meowing sound. Then he rubbed against Jake's arm and began to purr. Over the next few hours, Jake helped load people onto transport ships. Families with children went first, then scientists and other civilians. Amy Foster stopped by his quarters before she left. "I can take Rusty with me," she offered. "I've got space in my carrier for one more." Jake looked at Rusty, who was now lying on the bed, watching everything with those intelligent green eyes. Part of him wanted to send the cat away to safety. But another part of him couldn't bear to be alone during what might be his last hours. "Thanks, but I think he wants to stay," Jake said. Amy nodded like she understood. "Take care of yourself, Jake, and take care of him." After she left, Jake sat on his bed and scratched Rusty behind the ears. The cat purred and pressed his head against Jake's hand. "Just you and me now," Jake said. "Whatever happens, we'll face it together." Outside the viewport, the stars looked the same as always, beautiful and peaceful. But somewhere out there, an alien fleet was coming to destroy everything Jake cared about. He didn't know that in a few hours his decision to keep one rescue cat would change the course of the entire invasion. Rusty seemed to sense Jake's mood. The cat moved closer and settled down against Jake's leg, purring softly. For now, they had each other. And sometimes, that was enough. The first explosions woke Jake from a restless sleep. The station shook and emergency lights bathed everything in red. Rusty jumped up from where he had been sleeping on Jake's chest, his fur standing on end. "Battle stations, came the voice over the speakers. "All personnel to emergency positions." Jake rolled out of bed and grabbed his emergency kit. Through the viewport, he could see flashes of light in the distance where the human defense ships were fighting the alien fleet. The Zephyrian ships looked like nothing he had ever seen before, long, sleek vessels that moved with deadly grace through space. Another explosion, closer this time. The station's lights flickered, and Jake heard the groan of metal under stress. He needed to get to the engineering section to help keep the power systems running. "Stay here, Rusty," he said, heading for the door. "I'll be back as soon as I can." But when Jake looked back, the cat was following him. Rusty's eyes were wide and alert, his body low to the ground like he was hunting something. "No, buddy. It's too dangerous." Jake gently pushed the cat back into the quarters and sealed the door. The hallways were chaos. People ran in all directions, some carrying weapons, others pushing equipment on wheeled carts. The station shuddered again as more alien weapons hit the outer hull. In the engineering section, Pete Murphy was shouting orders to his team. "Reroute power from sections 7 and 8. We need everything we can get to the defense grid." Jake ran to his station and started checking the systems. The readings were bad. The aliens were hitting them with some kind of energy weapon that drained power faster than the reactors could replace it. "Jake, we're losing power to the sensor array," Pete called out. "Can you get down to level 5 and reset the backup systems?" "On it," Jake replied. Level 5 was in the lower part of the station, away from the command centers and living areas. Jake took a maintenance tunnel to avoid the crowded main corridors. The tunnel was dark except for emergency lighting, and the sound of his footsteps echoed strangely. He was halfway there when he heard something that didn't belong, a soft, scratching sound, like claws on metal. Jake stopped and listened. The died sound came again from somewhere above him in the ventilation system. "Rusty," he called softly. A familiar orange face appeared at a vent opening just ahead of him. The cat had somehow gotten out of Jake's quarters and found his way into the air ducts. "How did you—" Jake started to ask, but another explosion cut him off. This one was much closer, and the lights went out completely for several seconds. When the emergency power came back on, Rusty was gone. Jake wanted to follow the cat, but the station needed him. He continued to level 5, where he found the backup power systems damaged but still working. As he made repairs, he kept hearing strange sounds in the walls, scratching, bumping, and what sounded like small electronic devices being torn apart. Meanwhile, aboard the Zephyrian flagship Decimator, Admiral Crix studied the holographic display of the human station. The battle was going exactly as planned. The human ships were outgunned and falling back. Soon they would break through the station's defenses and begin the occupation. "Admiral," came the voice of his tactical officer, Commander Vex. "We're experiencing some unusual interference with our reconnaissance drones." Crix's 4 eyes focused on the smaller display showing drone telemetry. Several of the small scout units they had sent into the station were showing system failures. "Equipment malfunction?" Crix asked. His voice had a clicking quality that came from his insectoid vocal cords. "Unknown, sir. The drones are simply going offline one by one. We're losing surveillance coverage of the lower sections." Crix was not concerned. The drones were useful, but not essential. His main battle fleet could destroy the station with or without detailed reconnaissance. "Send more drones," he ordered, "and prepare the boarding pods. I want this station taken intact if possible." Back on the station, Jake had finished the repairs and was heading back through the maintenance tunnels when he heard something that made him freeze. It was a sound like electrical circuits shorting out, followed by a satisfied chirping noise that he recognized. He followed the sound to where the tunnel intersected with a larger ventilation shaft. Looking up, he could see scratch marks on the metal and small pieces of electronics scattered around. One piece looked like part of an antenna from some kind of small robot. "Rusty?" Jake called again. This time the cat appeared immediately, climbing down from the shaft with something metallic in his mouth. As Jake watched in amazement, Rusty dropped what looked like a small camera or sensor device at Jake's feet. The device was completely destroyed, its circuits torn out and its casing crushed. "What have you been doing?" Jake asked. Rusty made a pleased rumbling sound and rubbed against Jake's leg. Then, as if he had just remembered something important, the cat suddenly tensed and looked up at the ventilation shaft. His ears swiveled forward, and his pupils grew large. Jake heard it too. A soft, whirring sound, like tiny motors. Something was moving through the air ducts toward them. Rusty crouched low and started the strange chattering sound that cats make when they see birds or small prey. But there were no birds in space. Jake realized with growing amazement that Rusty was hunting the alien reconnaissance drones. The whirring sound got closer. Rusty's tail twitched once, then he launched himself back up into the ventilation shaft. With incredible speed and agility, Jake heard sounds of a brief struggle, scratching, electronic squealing, and then silence. A few seconds later, Rusty reappeared with another destroyed piece of alien technology. Jake picked up his radio. "Pete, this is Jake. You're not going to believe this, but I think my cat is destroying the alien surveillance equipment. Say again? Pete's voice was strained. The battle was getting worse. Rusty, my cat, he's hunting their drones. He's treating them like prey animals. There was a pause. Jake, are you feeling okay? Because now is not the time for jokes. Before Jake could respond, another explosion shook the station. This one was different. It came from inside the hull, not from an external hit. Through the maintenance tunnel's walls, Jake could hear shouts and the sound of energy weapons firing. Boarding parties, he whispered. The aliens were no longer just attacking the station. They were coming inside. Rusty heard the sounds, too. The cat's fur stood up along his spine, and he made a low growling sound that Jake had never heard before. It was the sound of a predator defending its territory. "This is our home now, isn't it?" Jake said quietly. "And you're not going to let anyone take it." Rusty looked at Jake with those intelligent green eyes, then turned and disappeared back into the ventilation system. Jake could hear him moving through the ducts, heading toward the sounds of fighting. Jake had always known that. Cats were hunters, but he was about to learn that when a cat decides to defend its territory, there are very few things in the universe that can stop it. Not even an advanced alien invasion force. The battle for the station was just beginning, and the Zephyrians had no idea what they were really up against. Captain Ben Taylor stood on the bridge of the defense cruiser Vigilant, watching something he had never seen before in 20 years of military service. On his tactical display, Zephyrian ships were going dark one by one. "Sir," called his weapons. "Officer Lieutenant Sam Brooks. The alien fleet is experiencing some kind of cascade failure. 3 of their destroyers have lost all power, and 2 more are showing critical system errors." Ben studied the display with growing amazement. The Zephyrians were supposed to have the most advanced technology in this part of the galaxy. Their ships were faster, better armed, and more heavily shielded than anything humans had built. Yet somehow, their fleet was falling apart. "Any idea what's causing it?" Ben asked. "Unknown, sir. Our sensors show no evidence of weapons fire or sabotage. Their ships are just shutting down." On the Zephyrian flagship Decimator, Admiral Crix was having the worst day of his long military career. Report after report came in of critical failures throughout his fleet. Ships that had been functioning perfectly were suddenly losing power, weapons, navigation, and communication systems. "Status report," Crix demanded, his 4 arms gesturing impatiently. Commander Vex consulted his displays with growing confusion. "Admiral, we have confirmed system failures on 17 ships. The pattern is unlike anything in our database. It appears to start with the smallest components, sensors, communication relays, navigation computers, and then spreads to larger systems." "Sabotage?" Crix asked. "Impossible, sir. Our security is absolute. No human could have infiltrated our ships." "Then explain to me how an inferior species is somehow disabling our fleet." Vex had no answer. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered 47 worlds using the same tactics and technology. Nothing like this had ever happened before. What neither alien knew was that their problems had started an hour ago, when a curious orange cat had discovered that the airlocks on damaged Zephyrian ships were just the right size for a determined feline to squeeze through. Rusty had found his way onto the first alien ship by following a strange scent through a hull breach. The ship smelled wrong. Not like home, not like the people he cared about. It smelled like threat, like something that wanted to hurt Jake and the others. So Rusty did what cats do when faced with a threat in their territory. He began to hunt. The Zephyrian ships were marvels of engineering, with computer systems far more advanced than anything humans had built. But they had one critical weakness that their designers had never considered. They were full of small, moving electronic components that looked and sounded exactly like prey to a hunting cat. Fiber. Optic cables pulsed with light like glowing worms. Circuit boards hummed and clicked like insects. Navigation sensors swiveled and tracked like tiny mechanical birds. To Rusty, the alien ships were not technological marvels. They were hunting grounds filled with the most interesting prey he had ever encountered. Jake, meanwhile, was trying to coordinate the station's defense from the engineering section. With power restored, they had managed to get the defense grid partially online. But the alien ships kept changing their attack patterns in ways that made no sense. "Pete," Jake called to the chief engineer. "Are you seeing this? The aliens are breaking off their attack runs just as our guns lock on to them." Pete looked at his console and frowned. "It's like they can't maintain targeting solutions. Their fire control systems keep going offline." "That's impossible. Their technology is supposed to be decades ahead of ours." What Jake didn't know was that at that very moment, Rusty was deep inside the Zephyrian flagship's computer core, systematically destroying every piece of equipment that caught his attention. The cat had discovered that the alien computers made particularly satisfying crunching sounds when he bit down on their circuit boards. Commander Vex tried desperately to regain control of his ship's systems. "Engineering, why are our targeting computers offline?" "Unknown, sir," came the reply. "The primary navigation computer has also failed. We're switching to backup systems." "How long for repairs?" We're not sure what needs to be repaired. Sir, the damage pattern is unlike anything we've encountered. Components are being destroyed faster than we can replace them." Aboard the station, Dr. Amy Foster was tracking Rusty's progress through the alien fleet, using the few remaining security cameras. What she saw amazed her. The cat had somehow made his way from ship to ship, using damaged airlocks and hull breaches like highways through space. "Kate," she called to Dr. Sullivan, "you need to see this." Kate looked at Amy's tablet, which showed thermal readings from inside one of the alien ships. A small, warm shape was moving through the vessel's corridors at incredible speed, leaving a trail of failed systems behind him. "How is he surviving in there?" Kate asked. "Those ships must have different atmospheres. Cats are tougher than people think," Amy replied. "And Rusty has always been special. I think he's figured out that the alien ships have environmental systems similar to ours. He's staying in areas with breathable air and avoiding the dangerous sections. But how does he know which systems to destroy?" Amy thought about that. "I don't think he does. I think he's just following his instincts. To him, anything that moves or makes noise is potential prey, and alien technology apparently moves and makes a lot of noise." The truth was even simpler than Amy imagined. Rusty wasn't making strategic decisions about which systems to destroy. He was just being a cat. When he saw something small and interesting, he investigated it. When it moved or flashed or made sounds, he pounced on it. When it seemed like a threat to his territory, he destroyed it completely. The fact that this behavior was perfectly designed to disable advanced alien technology was pure coincidence. But it was a coincidence that was rapidly turning the tide of battle. On the bridge of the Vigilant, Captain Ben Taylor received a communication from the station. "Captain, this is Commander Brady. We're receiving surrender signals from 3 Zephyrian ships. They're requesting permission to withdraw from the battle zone." Ben stared at his tactical officer in disbelief. "Surrender? The Zephyrians don't surrender. They've never surrendered in any battle on record." "Yes, sir, but their fleet is in complete disarray. Our sensors show massive system failures throughout their formation. Some of their ships are completely dead in space. Ben looked out at the battle zone where alien ships drifted helplessly while others tried desperately to retreat to a safe distance. In 40 years of recorded human-Zephyrian contact, nothing like this had ever happened. Any idea what's causing their system failures? Honestly, sir, I think it might be Jake Collins' cat. Ben was quiet for a long moment. Did you just tell me that a house cat is single-handedly defeating the Zephyrian Empire? Yes, sir. That appears to be exactly what's happening. Ben had heard a lot of strange things in his military career, but this was definitely the strangest. He was about to ask for clarification when his communications officer interrupted. Captain, we're receiving a fleet-wide transmission from the Zephyrian flagship. They're calling for a full retreat. For the first time in the history of human-alien conflict, a Zephyrian invasion force was withdrawing not because they were outfought, but because they literally could not understand what they were fighting against. And somewhere in the depths of an alien ship, a rescue cat named Rusty continued his hunt, completely unaware that he was making military history. Dr. Amy Foster crouched behind an overturned table in what used to be the station's cafeteria. She had returned on the last transport when the evacuation ships came under attack. Now she was trapped with 15 other crew members, while Zephyrian soldiers searched the station section by section. The aliens were tall and thin, with 4 arms and shiny black skin that looked like armor. They moved through the corridors with deadly efficiency, their weapons humming with energy that could cut through metal walls. Amy checked her tablet, which was connected to the station's internal sensors. What she saw made no sense. The aliens had deployed dozens of surveillance drones throughout the station, but more than half of them had gone offline in the past hour. The pattern of failures was strange. They seemed to start from the lowest levels and work upward. "Amy," whispered Dr. Kate Sullivan, the station's communications officer. "Can you access the security cameras? I need to know where those alien soldiers are." Amy switched to the camera feeds. Most of the cameras in the main sections were working, but the feeds from the maintenance areas and ventilation systems kept cutting out. She was cycling through different views when she saw something that made her gasp. On camera 7, which covered a junction of maintenance tunnels, she watched as a familiar orange shape dropped from an air duct onto a small alien device. Rusty landed on the device with all 4 paws, bit down on what looked like an antenna, and shook his head violently. Sparks flew from the device before it went dark. "That's impossible," Amy whispered. "What?" Kate asked. Amy showed her the tablet. They watched as Rusty examined his destroyed prey, then looked up at the camera as if he knew they were watching. The cat's green eyes seemed to glow in the red emergency lighting. "Jake's cat," Kate breathed. "He's hunting their equipment." It's not just random, Amy realized, studying the pattern of drone failures on her screen. Look at this. The failures follow the ventilation system layout exactly. He's moving through the air ducts and destroying every piece of alien technology he finds. Meanwhile, 3 levels up, Jake was crawling through a damaged corridor when he heard voices speaking in the clicking, whistling language of the Zephyrians. He pressed himself against the wall and listened. Through a hole in the wall, he could see 2 alien soldiers examining a pile of destroyed electronics. One of them was holding what looked like the remains of a surveillance drone. Its metal casing was twisted and torn, and bite marks were clearly visible on the circuit boards. The aliens were clearly confused. They kept pointing at the bite marks and making agitated clicking sounds. Jake didn't speak their language, but their body language suggested frustration and growing concern. One of the aliens spoke into a communication device. A few moments later, Jake heard heavier footsteps approaching. A larger Zephyrian arrived, this one wearing different armor that marked him as an officer. The officer examined the destroyed drone carefully, then barked orders at the other two. They scattered in different directions, apparently searching for whatever had damaged their equipment. Jake waited until they were gone, then continued through the corridor. He needed to find Pete Murphy and the other engineers. The station's main reactor was still running, but barely. If they could reroute power to the defense systems, they might be able to hold out until help arrived. He was almost to the engineering section when he heard a sound that made him smile despite everything. It was Rusty's hunting chatter, the excited noise cats make when they're about to pounce on something. Jake looked up at a ventilation grate just in time to see orange fur disappear into the darkness. A few seconds later, he heard the now familiar sounds of alien technology being torn apart. "Good boy," Jake whispered. The engineering section was a mess. Alien energy blasts had damaged several control panels, and emergency lights flickered weakly. Jake found Pete working frantically at the main console. "Jake, thank God you're alive," Pete said without looking up. "I need you to check the power. Coupling's on level 3. We're losing containment in the reactor core." "I'll go," Jake said. "But Pete, there's something you need to know. My cat is destroying their surveillance equipment." Pete stopped typing and looked at Jake. "You're what?" "Rusty. He's moving through the ventilation system and hunting their drones like they're mice." Amy confirmed it on the security cameras. Pete stared at him for a long moment. "Are you telling me that a house cat is conducting guerrilla warfare against an alien invasion force?" "That's exactly what I'm telling you." Before Pete could respond, the lights went out completely. Emergency power kicked in a few seconds later, but the main displays showed critical failures throughout the station. "Reactors going into emergency shutdown," Pete said grimly. "We've got maybe 10 minutes before life support fails." Jake ran toward level 3, but the corridors were now crawling with alien soldiers. He ducked into a maintenance shaft and started crawling toward the reactor level through the narrow space. The shaft was dark and cramped, but Jake had been working on the station for 2 years. He knew every tunnel and service corridor by heart. As he crawled, he could hear the aliens moving through the main passages, their voices becoming more agitated by the minute. When Jake reached the reactor level, he understood why. The entire area was littered with the remains of alien equipment. Drones, sensors, communication devices, all destroyed with the same pattern of bite marks and claw scratches. Rusty had been busy. Jake found the power couplings and started making repairs. The work was delicate and dangerous, especially with the reactor running unstable. One wrong move could cause an explosion that would destroy the entire station. He was halfway through the repairs when he heard footsteps in the corridor outside. Heavy alien boots, moving slowly and carefully. They were searching for whoever had been destroying their equipment. Jake held his breath and continued working. The power levels were slowly climbing back toward normal. Just a few more connections and the reactor would stabilize. Then he heard a sound that chilled his blood. The whine of an alien energy weapon charging up. They had found him. But before the weapon could fire, Jake heard something else. A sound like fury given voice, a yowl of rage that echoed through the metal corridors. It was followed immediately by alien screams and the crash of equipment being scattered. The weapon whine cut off abruptly. Jake heard running footsteps. The aliens were retreating. A few minutes later, Rusty appeared at the entrance to the reactor chamber. The cat was breathing hard, his fur disheveled, but his eyes were bright with satisfaction. In his mouth, he carried another piece of destroyed alien technology. "You saved my life," Jake said softly. Rusty dropped the alien device and walked over to Jake. The cat rubbed against his leg and began to purr, as if hunting alien invaders was just another normal day. Jake finished the repairs and watched as the power levels returned to normal. Throughout the station, lights flickered back on and life support systems resumed normal operation. But more importantly, Jake realized, Rusty had done something else. By destroying the alien surveillance network, the cat had given the human defenders a crucial advantage. The Zephyrians were fighting blind now, unable to coordinate their movements or track the remaining crew members. For the first time since the invasion began, Jake felt hope. The aliens might have superior technology and greater numbers, but they had never faced anything like a determined house cat defending his new home. The war was far from over, but the tide was beginning to turn. Admiral Crix stood before the central tactical display on his flagship, watching his invasion force crumble around him. In 300 years of military service to the Zephyrian Empire, he had never experienced anything like this. Ships that should have been invincible were floating helplessly in space. Crews that had conquered dozens of worlds were panicking and requesting permission to retreat. "Subcommander Rith," Crix called to his chief strategist. "Report." Rith approached with obvious reluctance. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by barely controlled fear. "Admiral, we have lost operational capability on 23 ships. Another 15 are reporting critical system failures. The humans appear to have deployed some form of biological weapon that we have never encountered." "Biological weapon?" Crix's voice carried the clicking undertones that indicated extreme agitation. "Explain." "Our security teams have found evidence of small bite marks on destroyed equipment. The damage pattern suggests some form of organic entity capable of moving. Through our ship's ventilation systems, it appears to target electronic components specifically." Crix studied the tactical display with growing horror. The pattern of ship failures was spreading through his fleet like a disease. Whatever the humans had unleashed was moving from vessel to vessel, systematically destroying everything it encountered. "How large is this entity?" he asked. "Based on the size of the access points it uses, we estimate approximately 0.5 meters in length. But Admiral, the precision of its attacks suggests intelligence far beyond what such a small creature should possess." Crix felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature of his ship. The Zephyrian Empire had detailed files on human military capabilities. They knew about human weapons, tactics, and technology, but there had been no mention of trained biological weapons. "Could it be some form of cybernetic enhancement?" Crix asked. "Unknown, sir. But whatever it is, it appears to be learning our technology as it encounters it. The damage patterns are becoming more sophisticated. It's not just destroying random components anymore. It's targeting critical system nodes." "What, Sub-Commander?" Rith didn't understand was that Rusty wasn't learning alien technology at all. The cat was simply following his nose, and the most important components in any Zephyrian ship happened to smell the most interesting to a curious feline. Power cores gave off electromagnetic fields that made Rusty's whiskers tingle. Navigation. Computers hummed at frequencies that reminded him of purring. And the central processing units had a particular metallic scent that triggered his hunting instincts more strongly than anything else. Rusty had no idea that by following these sensory quests, he was systematically dismantling some of the most advanced technology in the galaxy. At that moment, the cat was deep inside the ship's main computer core, investigating a particularly fascinating array of glowing circuits. The lights pulsed. in patterns that reminded him of the small creatures he used to hunt in the cargo holds of human ships. He crouched low, wiggled his hindquarters, and pounced. The results were spectacular. Sparks flew as his claws shredded the main data pathways. His teeth found the primary power coupling and bit down hard. The entire computer network crashed in a cascade of failing systems. On the bridge, every display went dark simultaneously. "What was that?" Crix demanded. "Main computer core is offline, sir," reported the technical officer. "We've lost navigation, weapons control, life support regulation, and communication with the rest of the fleet." "Backup systems?" "Also offline, sir. Whatever destroyed the main core appears to have targeted the backup systems as well." Crix turned to Rith with desperation in his 4 eyes. "How is this possible? How can a small biological entity understand our technology well enough to target specific systems?" Rith had been studying the damage reports from all their ships, and he had reached a terrifying conclusion. "Admiral, I believe we are dealing with a weapon specifically designed to counter our technology. The humans must have been preparing for this invasion for years. But how could they know our technical specifications? There's only one explanation, sir. They must have captured and reverse-engineered our equipment. This biological weapon has been programmed with detailed knowledge of our systems. Both aliens were wrong, of course. Rusty had never seen Zephyrian technology before today. But cats had been hunting small, quick, electronic-seeming prey for thousands of years. Mice that squeaked, birds that chirped, insects that clicked and buzzed. To a cat's ancient instincts, alien technology was just more of the same. Meanwhile, on the space station, Jake was frantically trying to track down his missing pet. The station's sensors showed that the alien fleet was falling apart, but he was more concerned about one small orange cat who might be floating helplessly in space. "Amy," he called on his radio, "have you seen any sign of Rusty on the security cameras?" "Actually, yes," Amy replied. "And Jake, you're not going to believe where he is." Jake found Amy in the communications center, where she was monitoring transmissions from the alien fleet. On her screen was a thermal image showing the interior of the Zephyrian flagship. "Is that—" Jake started to ask. "Your cat?" "Yes. He's inside their command ship, and from what I can tell, he's systematically destroying everything he can get his paws on." Jake stared at the screen in amazement. The thermal signature showed Rusty moving through the alien ship with purpose and efficiency, leaving a trail of failed systems behind him. How did he get over there? Best I can figure, he's been using the damaged hull sections as bridges between ships. The aliens punctured our outer hull in several places during their initial attack. Rusty must have found the holes and followed them into their fleet. But why would he do that? Amy thought about it. Cats are territorial animals, Jake. When they adopt a place as home, they defend it against any threat. I think Rusty has decided that this entire area of space belongs to him now. The whole area, including everything in it. The station, the nearby ships, even the space around us. From his perspective, those alien vessels are invaders in his territory. Jake watched the thermal display as Rusty continued his methodical destruction of the alien flagship. The cat paused occasionally, as if listening to something, then moved on to the next target. He's hunting them, Jake realized. Not just their equipment, he's hunting the whole invasion force. And he's winning, Amy added. Look at this. She switched to a display showing the status of the entire Zephyrian fleet. More than half the ships were showing critical failures. Several had gone completely dark. The rest were trying to retreat to a safe distance, but even those were experiencing random system malfunctions. On the flagship, Admiral Crix was facing the most difficult decision of his career. The unknown biological weapon had rendered his fleet combat ineffective. Continuing the battle would likely result in the complete destruction of his forces. "Sub-Commander Wraith," he said finally, "prepare a message for transmission to all ships. We are withdrawing from this sector immediately." "Sir? Are we retreating?" "We are conducting a strategic withdrawal in the face of an unknown superweapon. The Empire must be warned about human biological warfare capabilities." What Crix didn't know was that at that very moment, the superweapon he feared so much was taking a nap in a pile of destroyed computer circuits, purring contentedly after a successful hunt. Rusty had done exactly what millions of years of evolution had programmed him to do: protect his territory from threats. The fact that this had resulted in the defeat of an advanced alien invasion force was simply a happy accident, but to the Zephyrian Empire, it would go down in history as the day they encountered humanity's most terrifying weapon, a creature so perfectly designed for technological warfare that it seemed almost supernatural in its effectiveness. A creature they would later classify in their military files as the human battle cat. Jake had been searching for 3 hours when he finally found the airlock that Rusty had used to enter the alien ships. The opening was barely large enough for a cat to squeeze through, and it led to a damaged Zephyrian vessel that was drifting, powerless near the station. "Rusty!" Jake called into the darkness of the alien ship. His voice echoed strangely in the unfamiliar corridors. The ship's emergency lighting cast eerie shadows on walls that were clearly designed by non-human minds. Everything was the wrong height, the wrong shape, built for creatures with 4 arms instead of 2. Jake had to duck constantly to avoid hitting his head on what the aliens probably considered normal ceiling height. The air was breathable, which explained how Rusty had survived his journey through the fleet. The aliens used a similar atmospheric mix to humans, probably because oxygen-nitrogen atmospheres were common throughout the galaxy. As Jake moved deeper into the ship, he began to see signs of Rusty's passage. Torn cables hung from opened panels. Circuit boards lay scattered on the floor, their components chewed and clawed beyond recognition. In some places, the walls themselves had been torn open to reveal the complex systems underneath. "What have you been doing, buddy?" Jake whispered. He followed the trail of destruction through corridors that grew stranger with each step. The aliens had used a lot of blue and purple in their ship design, colors that probably looked normal to Zephyrian eyes, but seemed alien and unsettling to Jake. Finally, he heard a familiar sound, the deep, rumbling purr that meant Rusty was content and comfortable. Jake followed the sound to what looked like the ship's main computer core. The room was a disaster. Every surface was covered with the remains of sophisticated electronic equipment. Cables had been pulled out of their connections and scattered, like colorful snakes across the floor. Control panels hung open, their contents spilled out and destroyed, and in the middle of it all, curled up on what had probably been the central processing unit, was Rusty. The cat was sound asleep, surrounded by the debris of his conquest. "There you are," Jake said softly. Rusty opened his green eyes and looked at Jake without surprise, as if he had been expecting him. The cat stretched, yawned, and made a small chirping sound of greeting. "Come on, let's go home," Jake said, reaching for the cat. But Rusty had other ideas. Instead of coming to Jake, the cat stood up and walked to another panel that was still partially intact. He looked at Jake, then at the panel, then back at Jake, as if trying to communicate something important. Jake looked at the panel more closely. Unlike the others, this one was still glowing with active displays. It seemed to be some kind of communication system. "You want me to see this?" Jake asked. Rusty made an encouraging chirp and patted the panel with his paw. Jake approached carefully. The displays were covered with alien text that he couldn't read, but some of the images were clear enough. It looked like a tactical display showing the positions of ships in the fleet. Many of the ship icons were flashing red or had gone dark, completely. As Jake watched, more ships changed from green to red status. Whatever Rusty had done to this ship, it was happening to others as well. "How many ships have you been to?" Jake asked. Rusty just purred and rubbed against Jake's leg. "Pete." Murphy's voice crackled through Jake's radio. "Jake, where are you? We're getting some incredible readings out here." "I'm on one of the alien ships," Jake replied. "I found Rusty. Thank God. But Jake, you need to see what's happening to their fleet. Get back here as soon as you can." Jake picked up Rusty, who submitted to being carried with unusual grace. As they made their way back through the damaged ship, Jake noticed more details of the destruction. It wasn't random vandalism. Rusty had specifically targeted components that moved, flashed, or made sounds. The cat had followed his hunting instincts, and those instincts had led him to destroy the most critical systems on the ship. "You're not just a cat, are you?" Jake said as they reached the airlock. "You're some kind of natural-born technological warfare expert." Rusty purred and nuzzled Jake's neck, completely unaware that he had just changed the course of galactic history. When they returned to the station, Jake found the command center buzzing with excitement. Commander Brady was standing at the main display, watching as Zephyrian ships continued to go dark one by one. "Jake!" she called when she saw him. "Thank goodness you're safe! And is that the famous cat I've been hearing about?" Rusty looked around the command center with interest. His ears perked forward as he took in all the new sights and sounds. "Commander," Jake said, "I need to report what I found on that alien ship. Rusty didn't just stumble onto their vessels. By accident, he systematically destroyed their computer systems." "Systematically?" "He targeted specific components based on sensory cues. Anything that moved, made noise, or gave off electromagnetic fields. It's like he was designed to hunt electronic equipment." Dr. Amy Foster stepped forward. "Actually, that makes perfect sense from a biological standpoint. Cats evolved to hunt small, quick prey that makes sounds and moves erratically. Modern electronics must trigger those same hunting responses. But he's been moving from ship to ship," Commander Brady said. "How is that possible?" Amy consulted her tablet. "I've been tracking his movements through the fleet using thermal sensors. He's incredibly good at finding safe passages between ships, damaged airlocks, hull breaches, even maintenance tunnels that connect some of the vessels. It's like he has a map of their entire fleet in his head," Jake added. Pete Murphy looked up from his console. "Jake, you should see this. The alien communication traffic has increased by 300% in the last hour. Our translation computers can't keep up, but the tone suggests panic." On the main display, they watched as another Zephyrian ship went dark, then another. The aliens who had arrived with overwhelming superiority were now fleeing in disorder. "Are they retreating?" Commander Brady asked. "More than that." Captain Ben Taylor's voice came over the speakers from the Vigilant. "They're broadcasting some kind of fleet-wide warning. Our computers are picking up references to biological superweapons and unknown human capabilities." Jake looked down at Rusty, who was now sitting calmly in his arms, watching the tactical display with apparent interest. The cat seemed to Understand that the red icons represented threats, and his tail twitched slightly each time another ship went dark. They think he's a weapon, Jake realized. They have no idea that he's just a regular house cat doing what cats do. Regular? Amy laughed. Jake, there's nothing regular about what Rusty has accomplished today. He's single-handedly defeated an invasion force that should have been able to conquer our entire sector. But he doesn't know that, Jake said. To him, he was just protecting his home from strange-smelling intruders. Commander Brady studied the tactical display thoughtfully. Perhaps that's what makes it so effective. The aliens were prepared for human military tactics and technology, but they never imagined facing a creature that operates on pure instinct. A creature that views their entire fleet as prey animals, Amy added. As they watched, the last few functional Zephyrian ships began moving away from the station. Their formation was ragged and disorganized, nothing like the precise military formation they had arrived with. Rusty made a small, satisfied sound and settled more comfortably in Jake's arms. His work was done. The threats to his territory had been driven away, and his home was safe. Jake scratched behind the cat's ears and felt the rumble of contented purring. Good boy, Rusty. Very good boy. None of them knew that in the Zephyrian Empire's military archives. This day would be recorded as humanity's first deployment of biological warfare, or that Rusty's actions would lead to humans being classified as the most dangerous species the Empire had ever encountered. All they knew was that somehow, miraculously, they had survived. And it was all thanks to one rescue cat who had decided that this corner of space belonged to him. The bridge of the Zephyrian flagship Decimator was in chaos. Admiral Crix moved between damaged control stations, watching his invasion force collapse around him. Of the 50 ships he had brought to conquer the human station, only 12 were still fully operational. The rest were either dead in space or limping away with critical system failures. Admiral, Sub-Commander Rith approached with a data tablet clutched in his 4 hands. I have completed the preliminary analysis of the human biological weapon. Crix's eyes focused on the smaller alien with desperate intensity. Tell me you have found a weakness. Sir, this entity appears to be unlike anything in our military databases. It is small, approximately half a meter in length, but capable of moving through our ship's ventilation systems with remarkable speed and stealth. It targets electronic components with surgical precision. How does it know which components to target? Rith consulted his tablet nervously. That is the most disturbing aspect, Admiral. The creature appears to have been specifically designed to counter our technology. It seeks out moving parts, electromagnetic sources, and audio-generating equipment. Exactly the components that are most critical to our ship operations. What Rith didn't understand was that he was describing millions of years of feline evolution. Cats had always hunted creatures that moved, squeaked, and generated interesting smells. The fact that this perfectly described Zephyrian technology was pure coincidence. Could it be some form of cybernetic enhancement? Crix asked. Possible, sir, but our scans detect no artificial components. If it is cybernetic, the technology is far beyond our understanding. Crix studied the tactical display, where red icons marked his disabled ships. How many vessels has it infiltrated? We have confirmed its presence on at least 30 ships, sir. But Admiral Rith hesitated. There may be more than one entity. What do you mean? The pattern of destruction suggests either multiple creatures or a single entity capable of moving between ships faster than our sensors can track. Either possibility is equally disturbing. The truth was simpler than either alien could imagine. There was only one cat, but Rusty had discovered that the Zephyrian ships were connected by maintenance tunnels and supply conduits. What the aliens thought of as separate vessels, Rusty saw as one large territory filled with interesting hunting opportunities. At that moment, Rusty was 3 ships away from the flagship, investigating a particularly fascinating piece of equipment in what the aliens called their quantum communication relay. The device hummed at a frequency that made his ears twitch, and it had small lights that blinked in patterns that reminded him of fireflies. Rusty crouched low, his pupils dilating as he prepared to pounce. The fact that this device was responsible for coordinating communications between all ships in the fleet was irrelevant to him. All that mattered was that it moved and made interesting sounds. He leaped, landing on the device with all 4 paws. His claws found purchase in the delicate crystal matrix that formed the core of the communication system. As the crystals shattered, under his weight, every ship in the Zephyrian fleet lost contact with each other. On the flagship bridge, the communication officer turned to Admiral Crix with panic in his voice. "Sir, we've lost contact with the entire fleet. All communication channels are down." "The biological weapon?" Crix asked. "It must be, sir. The failure pattern is consistent with the other attacks." Crix felt something that no Zephyrian admiral had experienced in 3 centuries of conquest: complete helplessness. His fleet was being systematically destroyed by something he could not see, could not understand, and could not fight. "Sub-Commander Rith," he said quietly, "prepare the evacuation order." "Sir, we are withdrawing from this sector immediately. All ships are to retreat to the outer system and await further orders. But, Admiral, the invasion is over," Crix said firmly. "Whatever the humans have unleashed here, we are not prepared to counter it. The Empire must be warned." Meanwhile, on the space station, Jake was trying to explain to a growing crowd of people exactly what had happened. Word had spread that his cat was somehow responsible for defeating the alien invasion, and everyone wanted to see the famous Rusty. "He's just a regular cat," Jake insisted for the 10th time. "He was hunting what he thought were prey animals. He had no idea he was conducting military operations." Captain Ben Taylor, who had come aboard from the Vigilant, shook his head in amazement. "Jake, regular cats don't single-handedly defeat invasion fleets. What you're describing is the most effective act of sabotage in recorded military history." "But he doesn't know that," Jake protested. "Look at him!" Everyone turned to look at Rusty, who was sitting calmly on a desk, grooming his paw with complete indifference to the attention he was receiving. To all appearances, he was just an ordinary house cat who had gotten a bit dirty exploring the station. Dr. Amy Foster consulted her tablet. "The alien fleet is withdrawing to the outer system. Their formation is completely broken. Some ships are barely limping along." "Any word on casualties?" Commander Brady asked. "Surprisingly few. Most of the alien ships were disabled rather than destroyed. Rusty seems to have targeted their technology without harming the crew members." "Because he was hunting equipment, not people," Jake explained. "To him, the aliens weren't threats. Their machines were threats." Pete Murphy looked up from his engineering console. "Jake, I've been analyzing the pattern of damage to the alien ships. Your cat didn't just attack random components. He systematically targeted the most critical systems first: navigation, communications, weapons control, life support regulation. It's like he had a manual for Zephyrian technology. Or like millions of years of evolution had given him the perfect instincts for this kind of situation," Amy added. Commander Brady studied the tactical display thoughtfully. The question now is what happens next. The aliens know we have some kind of biological weapon capability. They'll report this to their superiors. Will they come back? Someone asked. Not anytime soon, Captain Taylor said. I've been monitoring their communications. They're classifying this entire sector as a high-risk zone. From their perspective, humans just deployed a superweapon that can disable their most advanced technology. Jake looked down at Rusty, who had finished grooming and was now watching the viewports with interest. Outside, the last of the alien ships were disappearing into the distance. They're really gone? Jake asked. Really gone, Commander Brady confirmed. And according to their transmissions, they have no intention of returning. A cheer went up from the assembled crew members. They had survived an invasion that should have destroyed them completely. But Jake felt a strange mix of relief and guilt. I never meant for this to happen, he said quietly. I just wanted to save one cat from the animal shelter. Amy put a hand on his shoulder. Jake, you did exactly the right thing. You gave Rusty a home and he defended it the only way he knew how. By hunting alien technology like it was a bunch of mice, Pete added with a grin. Rusty, hearing his name, looked up at Jake and made a small chirping sound. Then he jumped down from the desk and walked over to rub against Jake's leg, purring loudly. I think he knows he did something good, Amy observed. He knows he protected his home, Jake corrected. That's all that matters to him. Outside the viewport. Space was peaceful again. The immediate threat was over, but Jake realized that things would never be quite the same. Somewhere in the galaxy, the Zephyrian Empire was adding humans to their list of species too dangerous to invade, and it was all because one rescue cat had decided that his new home was worth defending, no matter what it took. 3 weeks later, Jake Collins found himself sitting in the station's communications center, facing a holographic display showing reporter Kate Sullivan from the Galactic News Network. Behind him, Rusty was taking a nap in a patch of sunlight from the viewport, completely oblivious to the fact that he had become the most famous cat in human space. So, Mr. Collins, Kate was saying, can you tell our viewers about your military-trained assault cat? Jake sighed. No matter how many times he corrected people, the story kept getting bigger and more dramatic with each retelling. Kate, for the last time, Rusty is not military-trained. He's just a regular rescue cat who was protecting his home. But surely you must have known about his special abilities when you adopted him. His special abilities include sleeping 18 hours a day, knocking things off tables, and getting fur on everything I own. He's a normal cat. Kate looked skeptical. Mr. Collins, normal cats don't single-handedly defeat alien invasion fleets. Our technical experts have analyzed the damage patterns on the Zephyrian ships. The precision of the attacks suggests advanced tactical training. Jake gestured toward Rusty, who was now lying on his back with his paws in the air, looking completely ridiculous. Does that look like advanced tactical training to you? Before Kate could answer, Commander Brady entered the communications center carrying a data tablet. Jake, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we've just received some interesting intelligence from Sector Command. What kind of intelligence? Jake asked. The Zephyrian Empire has issued a fleet-wide advisory warning all ships to avoid human space. They've classified humans as possessing biological superweapons of unknown capability. Kate's eyes lit up. Superweapons? Can you elaborate on that, Commander? Commander Brady looked uncomfortable. Well, they seem to believe that Rusty was specifically designed as a weapon. Their reports describe him as a technologically adaptive bioconstruct capable of infiltrating and disabling advanced systems. Jake groaned. He's a house cat. He likes tuna and catnip and sitting in cardboard boxes. The Zephyrians don't know that, Commander Brady continued. As far as they're concerned, humans have developed the perfect counter to their technology. Word is spreading throughout their empire that human space is too dangerous to invade. So we're safe? Jake asked. More than safe. 3 other alien species that were considering expansion into our territory have reconsidered their plans. The story of the human battle cat is becoming something of a legend. Kate leaned forward eagerly. Commander, can you confirm reports that the military is developing a whole program based on Rusty's success? Absolutely not, Commander Brady said firmly. There is no military cat program. There are no genetically enhanced feline weapons. There is just one perfectly ordinary rescue cat who happened to save us all. What none of them knew was that at that very moment, Dr. Amy Foster was in her laboratory writing a report that would eventually reach the highest levels of human government. Her study of Rusty's behavior during the invasion had revealed something remarkable about the relationship between feline hunting instincts and advanced technology. Cats, she wrote, have evolved over millions of years to hunt creatures that move quickly, make high-pitched sounds, and generate electromagnetic fields similar to those produced by modern electronics. When confronted with alien technology that exhibits these same characteristics, domestic cats respond as if facing natural prey. Her report would eventually lead to new research into bio-inspired security systems and the development of detection equipment based on feline sensory capabilities. But that was still years in the future. For now, Rusty was content to sleep in the sun and occasionally acknowledge the stream of visitors who came to see the hero cat of Deep Space Station Omega-7. Jake had tried to maintain their normal routine, but it was difficult when people kept wanting to interview them, study them, and offer to buy Rusty for enormous sums of money. The cat, fortunately, seemed completely uninterested in fame. He treated visiting admirals and news reporters with the same polite indifference he showed to everyone except Jake. Mr. Collins, Kate was saying, what's next for you and Rusty? Will you be accepting any of the offers to tour the colonies and share your story? No, Jake said firmly. We're staying right here. This is our home. As if responding to Jake's words, Rusty opened his eyes and looked directly at the camera. For just a moment, his green eyes seemed to convey an intelligence that went beyond normal feline awareness. Then he yawned, stretched, and went back to sleep. Well, there you have it, Kate said to her viewers. The hero of humanity's greatest victory is taking a well-deserved nap. This is Kate Sullivan reporting from Deep Space Station Omega-7. After the interview ended, Jake picked up Rusty and carried him back to their quarters. The cat purred and nuzzled against Jake's neck, the same as he had on the day Jake first brought him home. You know what you did, don't you? Jake said quietly. You saved all of us. Rusty made a small chirping sound and touched his paw to Jake's face. Their quarters were exactly as they had been before the invasion, except for one addition. On Jake's desk sat a small plaque that Commander Brady had insisted on presenting. It read, "In recognition of exceptional service to the defense of human space." Jake had tried to refuse it, arguing that Rusty wouldn't understand what it meant. But Commander Brady had pointed out that it wasn't really for Rusty, it was for everyone else. A reminder that sometimes the greatest heroes are the ones who act without thinking about the consequences. Outside their viewport, space traffic was returning to normal. Cargo ships brought supplies, science vessels headed out on research missions, and patrol boats maintained their regular routes. But Jake knew that things were different now. Somewhere in the galaxy, Alien civilizations were marking human space as too dangerous to invade. And it was all because one rescue cat had decided that his new home was worth defending. Jake sat down at his desk and scratched Rusty behind the ears. The cat began to purr, a sound that had once been just a pleasant background noise but now seemed like the most important sound in the universe. "Just you and me, buddy," Jake said. "Just like always." Rusty settled onto Jake's lap and continued purring. Outside, the stars shone peacefully in space that was now a little bit safer, thanks to one ordinary cat who had done something extraordinary without ever realizing it. In the end, that was perhaps the most human thing of all, that their greatest victory had come not from advanced weapons or brilliant strategy, but from simple compassion. Jake had saved a cat from a shelter, and in return, that cat had saved them all. The universe was full of advanced civilizations with incredible technology and vast military forces, but they had never encountered anything quite like the bond between a human and his rescue cat. And as long as that bond existed, humanity would never be truly alone in the darkness between the stars.